Hello. I have a bit of bad news. Brian Honan couldn't make it, but a replacement will give the same presentation. Please come to the...
Good evening, everybody. My name is Marie Bourne. I'm a 29-year-old female reporter. My birthday was the 27th of July 1980. And for all you single guys out there, and maybe you're married guys, I'm single. I have no boyfriend. And, I'll be in the bar later on, so please feel free to come up and talk to me. If you want to talk to me, these are things I like. And these are things you should use if you want to earn my trust and, maybe have a bit of a chance. I love travel. Last year I went to Paris, went for a weekend, and I saw Jimi Hendrix's grave, and Jimi Hendrix is one of my music heroes. I also went with a girlfriend of mine over to New York, and boy did we shop. And we loved the Apple Store, it was great. And if you're into music, I love 80s music. Anybody heard Kraftwerk? Yeah. Right, there's a few guys out there I might have a chance with. Also, if you like knitting, I love knitting. It's what I do in the winter. It keeps my hands occupied. It's a great hobby. Photography. I have a lot of slides up and photographs up on Flickr, and you can look at my Flickr account all the time and see what I like doing. Science fiction is another hobby of mine. I read loads of science fiction books. I just love science fiction. They're particularly good. And anything to do with the paranormal, ghosts and goblins. And being Irish, we have a long history of paranormal activity in Ireland, a lot of legends and stuff. So it's a particularly interesting topic of mine. For all you ladies in the audience, this is my blusher, Traub. It brings up that glow, girls, that gets them excited. Well, that's what I use, and it's quite effective too. I come from a small town in the middle of Ireland called Ballymoyler. And if you want to look at that on Google Maps, there it is. You can see it's just there down outside a town called Carlow. So it's in the centre of Ireland. Lovely little place. Like every Irish town, it's got more pubs than shops and more shops than churches. So it's a great place to be. These are my parents. My father's called Michael, and my mother's called Grace. Or as my uncles call her, and it's the nickname she's had for years, is Goosey Goosey. I don't know why, but maybe they couldn't pronounce Grace very well. My father worked for many years as the financial director of this particular company, Augusby and Butler. He worked there until of March last year, where he resigned. So he's now enjoying playing golf and relaxing and spending his money. Thankfully, he got his pension before the current crisis, but he's doing okay. I myself, my work is I'm a technology journalist. I work for a number of publications in Ireland. One is SiliconRepublic.com. It's an online publication specialising in technology, particularly in the corporate area. We're part of the Irish Independent Group. The Irish Independent is the second biggest newspaper in Ireland, so I do a lot of technology articles for them. I'm the editor of the GadgetRepublic.com. Now, for all you geeks out there, I have the coolest job. I get all the gadgets, all the iPhones, all the Nokia phones, all the MP3 players, movie cameras, and my job is to play with them and to write an article about them, and it's really great. Before I got into all this technology, I used to spend time as the court editor for a company called Merrill Legal Solutions, so we'd write little articles about what would happen in the courts in Ireland. I've done some work for PC Live magazine, which is an Irish magazine specialising on the domestic user. And I also do a lot of research for Dublin and Olivia FM. It's a small station, just very small station in Dublin, and the programme I work on there is on paranormal. So I go out and investigate paranormal activities in Dublin, ghost stories, etc. I went to school in a college in Carlow called St. Leo's College. That was my high school. I then got a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science in UCD. But, despite where I am now, back in those days I didn't really see myself working with computers. So I then went on to Griffith College, and I'd done a degree in journalism. So thankfully the two of them have now merged together, and I can have the two loves of my life, technology and journalism, working together. And to advance that further, I am now studying digital media technologies in the Dublin Institute of Technology. To cap it all off, in 2008, I was voted the Technology Journalist of the Year. My mother was very, very happy and very proud. So was I. But also in 2008, somebody stole my identity. Now, for those of you who are a bit more observant in the audience, I actually am Marie. My name is Brian Honan, and despite Benny saying I couldn't be here. And in 2008, Marie approached me to see how much danger are we putting ourselves in by exposing personal information on the internet. It was during October. In October, we have a week in Ireland called Identity Theft Week, and basically it's to try and highlight the danger of identity theft to the public at large. So Marie wanted to write an article to make people aware of the dangers of social networks, that putting information up there could actually, in some way, shape or form, cause you some damage. So she asked me, Brian, what risks are we exposing ourselves to by putting our information up on the internet, by having stuff on Facebook or on Twitter or on MySpace or Bebo or wherever else? And what could somebody do with that information they got? Now, Marie originally wanted me to be able to conduct a transaction on her credit card, but being an information security professional and one that likes my job, I didn't think that would be a very smart career move to be committing credit card fraud, even if it was in the name of journalism. So I said to her, okay, leave it with me, let me see what we can do and what information we can get. Now, there were certain rules I had to play by. Number one, I could only use information I found online. So I couldn't go to where she lived or where she worked and look for information that you'd find in a garbage bin or whatever. I couldn't approach any of her friends to ask any information about her. I couldn't social engineer anybody. I couldn't hack into any systems, so therefore I couldn't break the law. So basically all I could do and all I could use was information that I could find freely on the internet and that was publicly available. So information, in effect, that Marie volunteered and put on the internet. So, and the other trick was I had a week to do it because she wanted the article to go out during the Identity Theft Week. So I had 4 or 5 nights to try and get this done. And this is how I stole Marie's ID. Now, I know some of you are probably going to say, well, has everybody heard of Maltego? Okay, Maltego is a great tool. It'll do a lot. It'll automate a lot of what I've done. But again, one of the rules was I couldn't use automated tools. So what information could I find? And these are the tools that I used. The biggest one and the most effective one. And if you're ever doing any penetration attacks or any social engineering attacks on a company or your own company, go to Google and see what you can find out about the people who work in your organization, or indeed about other people as well. So Google was my first port of call. So I spent hours going through Google, doing searches for Marie Bourne, different combinations of it, trying to come back and see what information I got. And with that information, there was a lot of dead ends and misleads where there was other Marie Bournes that weren't related to her or in any way, shape or form. So I had to try and filter out the information specific to her. But that information, I was able to use it to go to other areas. So I knew that she was on LinkedIn. So I went onto LinkedIn, and that's where I got all the history about her career, where she'd worked and where she'd previously been, and also to a certain extent to what colleges she'd gone to. I then went to those sites to see was there any information that I could find out about Marie, were there any awards she got or anything else that I could use. Amazon.com became a very useful tool. Through Amazon.com, I found out where her home address was. Now, Marie, as you said earlier on, came from Carlow, which is a small town in the middle of Ireland, and she's actually currently living in Dublin. I didn't know that until this particular exercise. But through Amazon.com and through the wish list that people have up there and that Marie had up there, I was able to identify, A, what books she likes. So I could do a background that she likes science fiction and into the paranormal. But B, she had a delivery address on that wish list, which was based in Carlow. There was also another gentleman on Amazon.com, Michael Bourne, who also had the same address. So I figured that's a male that's related to Marie. That's her father or her brother. So there's bits of information I was able to pick up from that, purely on Amazon.com, that she'd volunteered through the wish list. Twitter turned out to be a great tool. Who's on Twitter? I thought to be a few more. Well, it's quite a few. But on Twitter, Marie was given a lot of the information. I'd done a Twitter search, and I had something like 20 pages that I went through of conversations that Marie had been involved in, and through that I was able to build up a profile that she'd been to Paris and she'd been to New York. So because of that, I knew that she had a passport. So that was another piece of information that I filed away to use. I went onto Facebook to seek again information about her, and this is where things started to get a bit difficult. Marie, working in technology, and probably like a lot of us, are aware of the dangers in some regards of what these social networks can do. So she had her profile protected. And I figured that if I tried to be a friend of her in Facebook during the exercise of trying to steal her identity, she'd probably say no. So that was a dead end I had to try and work away around. But what I was able to do was see through Facebook who some of her friends were. And then looking through their profiles, I was able to drop a network of people and contacts that she knew, both professionally and personally. And then using that, I went into other networks to try and get more information. So again, into myspace.com and into Facebook. So myspace.com and Bebo. Again, building up the profile. And in each of those social networks, she left a little clue to another identity that she had. So, for example, I found out what her online identity was in various other social networks. So the little nicknames she used in different networks. So be able to build that up. Again, gathering more and more information. Names Database is a website that you can use for people who went to high school together to find out who your friends are and to reunite with them. So again, using that information, I found out what our high school was. Ponce.com is another social network site, which is a site that it's not active anymore. It was bought over last year. But Ponce.com, again, as I said, it's a social network site, and there's a friends and friends, etc. So she had friends on that site that she had in Facebook and she had in Bebo, so I was able to look at their profiles. Now Marie had a profile protected there, and there wasn't a whole lot of information being displayed to the public apart from the fact that she was female living in Dublin. But one of the features in Ponce was to show friends of a friend. So you could do a particular search, do friends of a friend, and it would list who that person's friends were. So from the information I gathered in Facebook, I looked at one of her friends and done a friend of a friend search on that particular person, and it listed all the friends that person had in Ponce. And I gave the information like their username, their full name, and bingo, it gave me their date of birth. So through Ponce.com and that Friends with Friends feature, I was able to get Marie's date of birth. Now, my first thought was, well, maybe it's a false date of birth. So I went over to Flickr. And in Flickr, I looked through her photo albums, and she had pictures of her birthday party dated the same day as her date of birth. So I was able to cross-reference that information, and I had her date of birth. Up in the top left corner there, you've got the CRO, which is the company's registrations office. And that's where I done a search for Michael Bourne, and it turned out he was a director in that company in Carlow. So that's where I figured that was her father. You can see there in the middle, she's got WordPress. So Marie has her own blog, and through one of her blog entries, she mentioned her mother and father, her mother's first name and her father's first name. So again, bits of information I was able to piece together to build up a profile of her. So I had a date of birth, and I had a place of birth. Now what I needed to really steal identity was her mother's maiden name. So I started doing searches for Grace Bourne, based around Carlow. And in the top right hand corner there's a Carlow County Council website. And on that website they publish all the details of people applying for planning permission. So if you want to build a house or do an extension on your house, you have to apply for planning permission. That information is made public as to who's making that request, and if anybody objects to that planning application, their information is public as well. And one of those applications, there was a Grace Bourne, so I knew that was Marie's mother. So the next site I went to was the website belonged to the Irish government, who look after births and deaths, and I applied online for Marie's certificate. Now I was a bit surprised because on the application form, the information that was mandatory was the person's name, so Marie Bourne, her date of birth, that was mandatory, so I gave that, her place of birth, which was Carlo, her father's name, which I had, but I didn't need to give her mother's name. I don't know if that's the same in Belgium and anywhere else, but I thought that was a strange anomaly that, in order to get somebody's birth certificate, you just have to give their father's name. So I applied online and I sent my €10 by check, and that's what I got in the post. I actually got Marie's original birth certificate back in the post, and you can see I've blanked out some of the information. So her real date of birth is there, her middle name is there, her mother's maiden name is there, and when she was registered. So now I had her date of birth, her father's name, her place of birth, and her mother's maiden name, and also her birth certificate. In Ireland and in most countries, your birth certificate is the root of all your identity. If you want to apply for a passport or you want to apply for a driver's license, you need your birth certificate. And you can walk in, and I don't know what's like in Belgium, but in Ireland, to apply for a passport, you fill out the form, you get your passport photographs, you sign the back of the photograph, you get your birth certificate, you go to the local police station, where a local police officer is supposed to sign, yes, this is Brian Honan, or in this case Marie Bourne, and stamp it and said, yes, I've identified who that person is. Now in Dublin, the police officers can't know every single person, so there's a bit of a hole in the vulnerability in the plan there. So once with the birth certificate, as I said, I can get a passport or a driver's license. Once I have those, oh, sorry, there's a slide missing. Sorry, there's a slide missing. But once I have those, I can then apply for a loan. I go into a bank. The bank looks for state-issued ID. I now have a passport. I knew Marie had a passport, so all I'd have to do to get one in her name was report the passport stolen, have a sex change, lose about 10 stone, and then go into the police station. And I thought that was a bit too difficult to get done in a week, but so that's where the project ended there. But the theory would have been we could have got somebody around the same age as Marie to get her photographs taken, to go in with Marie's birth certificate, and they'd have been signed by the police officer, and the passport would have been issued to her, or a driver's license. And once you have state-issued ID, you can then go and apply to the bank for a mortgage or for a loan. Take that money and run. And the real person will be left to pick up the pieces afterwards. Their credit rating would have been gone, and Marie would have had to deal with the consequences. Or I just have a piece of ID that I keep with me, so that if I'm ever stopped by the police for any criminal activities, I give them somebody else's ID. And that person then has to deal with the consequences of being caught for speeding or whatever it is. Now people said to me, but Brian, on the internet, the old adage, nobody knows you're a dog. You can be anonymous on the internet. Nobody knows who you are, so is there really that much for risk? But I think going through what I've done with this particular project, I think we can see, your identity exists in many, many places. It's on websites and social networks that you've put your information in. It's in emails that you've sent around the place. It's in companies' databases that you've surrendered your information. So your bank, your tax office, you've given them a lot of your personal information. So your personal information lies around everywhere. The colleges you went to, they all have your information. The companies you've worked for, they would have your personal information. So a lot of the information is out there, and a lot of it's in electronic format. And the problem is, once it's in electronic format, it can be accessible to quite a lot of you people in this room. Maybe not to me, because I don't have the same technical skills a lot of you do. But seeing some of the demonstrations today, it does show that once it's on the net, it's available to anybody. So I think some of the key lessons we learned, Marie wasn't very happy to get that I got all this information, and her reaction was that she actually closed down a lot of her profiles even tighter. She took a private profile in Twitter so nobody could see her Twitter stream. But then when I told her you could do a Twitter search and her name would come up from other people's feeds, she realized the futility of trying to block it. So I think that what we're using as organizations to identify remote users or to identify clients is what we call secret information. But that information is not secret. Somebody's mother's maiden name is not secret. Somebody's date of birth is not secret. Somebody's high school is not secret. Even somebody's favorite color or their pet, their first dog's name or whatever is not secret anymore, because people have that information up on their profiles. They have it in their Facebooks. They have it on their blogs. So the secret information we're using is not secret anymore. Sorry. So we need to stop using that data for remote authentication. We as an industry need to think of ways we can better authenticate and identify clients and remote users. I think one thing we have to recognize as well is that in the modern world, that once the umbilical cord is cut when you're born from your mother, your identity depends on third parties. You are no longer in control of your identity. We all depend on a third party to verify who we are, be that your passport, your driver's license, whatever. We all depend on third parties. So those third parties have an obligation to protect that information, and we need to make sure that if we're one of those third parties, we are protecting that information properly as well. Your personal data can reside on servers not in the EU. And that has a lot of implications because A, it's not covered by the Data Protection Act. And if it's not covered by the Data Protection Act, a lot of other companies outside the EU don't even have strict privacy policies. If you take that website, ponce.com, I actually contacted them and said, hey guys, I think you've got a vulnerability on your system and that private information is being displayed. And they actually replied to me and said, no, it's not. If you read our terms and conditions on our privacy policy, we say your information can be displayed by your friends. Now Marie, when she signed up, did not read that privacy policy because guess why? It's too long, too complicated. She just wanted to be, she got an invite from a friend. She wanted to join the network. She clicked OK. Up popped the privacy policy, and she just clicked I accept the terms and conditions, and in she went. So, we need to be careful about the privacy policies we develop and how we present that to the clients and users we have as well. Make sure they're easy for people to understand and that they understand the risks that they face. And the data is permanent. What goes on the internet stays on the internet. As I said, I looked into her Twitter stream. I'd done a Twitter search and I had pages and pages of information that I could wade through and find out more personal information about Marie. I was finding out which pub she was going to. I was finding out what parties were happening. I was finding out a lot about her real world life from what was on the virtual world. So social networks can be particularly dangerous. Now, I'm a big user of social networks myself. I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook. But we have to remember that in those social networks, yes, the key is that they're social, but they're not the same social as they are in the real world. Like, we'll be in the bar later on this evening, we'll be having conversations. But once those conversations are over, those conversations are lost and gone forever. We have a conversation on Twitter or Facebook or wherever else, that conversation stays online forever. There are tools you can use, the Wayback Machine, etc., to get information that's been lost 10, 15 years ago. But we need to remember that information can be permanent. And your friends can leak your information. Without you knowing it, your friends could be leaking your information somewhere. There's always there's actually a famous case in Ireland. Remember the local elections we had during the summer back in June? There was Fine Gael is one of the big parties in Ireland. There was a young lady who was a candidate for them in one of the local elections, and her profile was very professional. She was in her 20s, always in a business suit, always looking very smart, very professional. And then the newspapers done a search on her on Facebook, and not in her profile, but one of her friends' profiles was a picture of herself and her friends on holiday in Ibiza, in a bar, drunk, kissing each other. And of course, that's the one that the newspapers ran with, not the professional one. Now, I don't know how many votes she got. I'm sure the male population probably gave her quite a few votes, but your friends can leak your information and can damage you online as well. And if you use tools like Maltego or even manually like I did, you can do a profile of somebody quite quickly. You can build up a profile of people from snippets of information you get from different sites. You can build up a profile of yourself or other people as well. And you may not own the information you put up on the internet. There's lots of controversy over Facebook and its privacy policy and who owns the data that's on it, and same with MySpace, etc. So information you put onto those sites, under the terms and conditions of those sites, you may not own the information. So again, we need to be careful what it is. So be careful for the terms of use that you use. I think a big lesson we learned as well is because the amount of information she was leaking through Twitter and through Facebook or wherever she was going, a lot of your online activity could impact your real world activity. So, if we go to the extreme and we take somebody who wants to bully people, getting the information online, it's giving them more ammunition that they can use to bully the person in the real world. Or on burglary, hey guys, I'm heading off to New York for the weekend. Okay, there's an empty apartment. Or somebody wants to stalk you, ex-lover, somebody who wants to be with you, you don't want to be with them. Well, you're telling all your friends and the world that you're going to be in such a bar tonight. Don't be too surprised if the person you don't want to be there might turn up. So, you need to be particularly careful what goes on. And there have been cases where some information leaks have led to physical attacks as well. And there have been some real-world examples. Some of this is not just theory, me making it up. Back in June of this year, the FBI warned a lot of Asian businessmen in California that there was a scam going on whereby they were getting emails threatening them with physical violence, that they didn't pay up an X amount of money, somebody's going to pay a visit to them and break their legs. But when the FBI investigated the case, they discovered that those emails were actually coming from Asia, and that the people who were sending the threats weren't even in America. They were building up profiles of Asian businessmen from what information they could find on the internet, and then trying to intimidate them into giving up their money. Here's another real-world example. Allegedly, this gentleman on Twitter tweeted, "We made the Kansas City in one piece. We're visiting at Noel Hyman's family. Can't wait to get some good video online while we're here." So while he was there, somebody was in his house and burgled his house. And he believes the reason they knew he wasn't there was because they found his Twitter stream, and therefore knew his house was empty and burgled him. Two very famous cases. The Twitter hack that happened recently, whereby Google Apps was hacked into by some hackers. And how they got in was they done a profile of one of the Twitter employees and used the secret questions to reset their password for Google Apps, and then they were in. So they got access to email and all the documentation within Twitter via Google. And then, of course, Sarah Palin, when her Yahoo account got hacked during her campaign last year to become Vice President of America, her account was reset because the secret questions asked were, where did you go to high school? What is your favorite color? So, of course, you go on to Sarah Palin's biography online, and it tells you where she went to high school. You do a few more searches, and there's probably an interview somewhere where she told somebody her favorite color was blue or red or whatever it was. And that person then was able to reset her password and then log in and get into our Yahoo email account. So, again, secret questions, as I said earlier on, are not so secret anymore. So I suppose I'm very conscious I'm standing between you guys and beer, so we're going to try and wrap it up in a minute. But I think the key message we need to remember is what goes on the internet stays on the net. Okay, information you put up online is going to stay online. It's permanent. Your friends can compromise you. So, be careful what you share online, and maybe educate your friends as well as to what the dangers are, so they are careful with the information that they have. One of the key messages I'm trying to deliver as part of this talk in various places is we no longer have secret questions, or if we do, we need to think of better ones to ask people, or better ways to identify people. We also need to remember that the virtual world can impact on the real world as well. So right now, people know that I'm here in Brussels. So, maybe somebody's visiting my house right now that I don't want to know. But we need to be aware of those things and be careful what we say, or how long you're going to be away for, or whatever. I think, again, as a society, we need to look at how we create somebody's ID. As I said, once the umbilical cord is cut, your ID depends on third parties to verify it. So we need, I think, for governments to look at ways to better identify and better authenticate people. And that's it. Is there any questions?
In Ireland, do you have identity cards like we have in Belgium? Because you're saying that apparently, based on a birth certificate, that you can get things like a passport or a driver's license.
Mm-hmm.
That's what is not the case, in fact. From the age 12, you already have an identity card, and then based on that identity card and your own presence, you can get things like a driver's license or something like that. But on your identity card, there is already a picture of you, so. Mm-hmm. Doing things like you're saying is a bit more complicated here, I think.
How do you get the identity card?
Well, that's a good question.
Let me guess. You have to have a birth certificate.
I guess maybe. I don't know.
Pardon?
Can I just give another remark?
Sure.
You did actually all that research going to each site individual, actually. Yeah. I found recently also a site called 123people.com.
Yeah.
And if you give in just your name and maybe also a city or a country, then you can find already a lot of information about yourself. So
there's quite other websites similar to that as well. That can, since this exercise, I've done a bit more research, and there's been sites like that I've looked at. Maltego, I've been playing around with a lot more, and Maltego it's a great tool. It's very, very powerful. It will actually do a lot of what I've done in a lot of
research I do sometimes is also just look in DNS records.
Yeah.
It also gives a lot of information about people, where they live, cell phone numbers, stuff like that.
And you cross-reference a cell phone number, you might find it on our website somewhere else. So it's quite interesting. One of the interesting things that happened actually as a result of this was back in January or February this year, just when the economic slowdown was really hitting hard. SiliconRepublic.com are publishing a lot of stories about technology companies in Ireland shutting down and how the economy was being badly affected. And one particular individual kept emailing the magazine, given out in very hard terms with bad language and everything, saying don't be doing this, or you're crazy, etc., etc. Some very upsetting language. So Marie asked me, could I find out who it was? And within 10 minutes, I knew the individual liked playing with radio-controlled cars, lived at home with his father, and I got the father's phone number and email address, and I sent it back to Marie. So this person was sending in an anonymous email, but didn't realize that you could pick it up.
Just a small comment. You mentioned the end-user license agreement, and that's something which I think we need to take into consideration, that it's not valid. Because if you would look at what happened in Facebook, if you look what happened in Twitter, this thing is something which, when you register to a site and you have X amount of rules there, it's it just moves and changes all the time. Twitter just said today or a few days ago, they say that now they define that the data is by the users, but they control it. Mm-hmm. That's something that they didn't wrote to the beginning. A site that would save your information, and when you registered with specific end user license agreement, they can change it. And if the data is still there, then everything that you had in the past, which that you went online because you thought that it would be protected based on the end user license agreement, is not going to be valid anymore. So I think the minute that you go online, as you said, it's even if you have any, it's not going to legally, you don't have any tools to protect yourself to your data.
Well, yes, I'm not a legal expert, so but as European citizens, we do have a lot of protection under the Data Protection Act. So there is a lot of controversy happening at the moment, whereby Google and Facebook and Twitter are all talking to the European Commission about what they can and can't do and what information they can and can't save. So there might be certain protections there that we have, but I think the problem is like Facebook, for example, at one stage was saying all your information is theirs, and even if you delete your profile, the information can still be left online. So it's a very valid point you make, is that, you know, once you go online, you've lost control of the information yourself, and you're dependent on other organizations to mine that information for you.
Eventually the governments, even that's the only way that they can control, protect their citizens, because we don't have any tool.
Well, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't trust the Irish government mining my information. Or controlling it even. Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you.